strategic tool for building and sustaining beneficial relationships with foreign audiences to garner support for foreign policy objectives in light of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis. We'll examine how public diplomacy has influenced Russia's image both domestically and internationally, notably since the onset of the special military operation in 2022. Russia's faced intense criticisms, and as we saw sanctions coming from the United States of America, we have actually witnessed disinformation campaigns, retaliation from NATO countries, and of course the European Union, and even actors with proxy interest in the crisis. These factors, according to reports, have helped to jeopardize Russia's global reputation, particularly among those unfamiliar with the historical context behind the military operation. Now, public diplomacy offers a way for nations to shape the narratives around the actions, especially those with global implications. With input from our panel of experts today, this discussion actually will explore the strategies employed by the Russian government or Russian Federation to actually influence public perception and home and abroad, as well as the challenges it faces in presenting its narratives amid widespread criticisms or probably negative discourse circulating across the globe regarding the position of Russia in the Ukrainian crisis. Thanks once more, ladies and gentlemen, and I will join you just after the jingle. Okay, you're welcome once more. Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is worth noting that the panel of experts is actually here to give more highlight or insight on the topic for discussion, public diplomacy, and how the Russian Federation has been able to use this faced with numerous perspectives regarding its position in the Ukrainian crisis. Let's now head to uncover this panel, and I'll be taking you to Moscow at this particular moment, welcoming Professor Maurice Okoli of the Institute for African Studies, also Institute of World Economy and International Relations. It's a pleasure having you in Global Insight with the Professor Okoli. Hello, Professor. If you can hear me, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay.
And we leave Moscow now to India, joined by PURNIMA ANAND, who is President BRICS International Forum. Welcome to the program, dear PURNIMA.
Hello, good evening from India.
Looking forward to having a fruitful and a constructive discussion with you. The other guests are going to join us subsequently, but before we enter into either, okay, you've just been informed that we already have Yulia BERG, who is joining also from Moscow. She's a political scientist and also founder of GLOBUS Expert Club. Hello, Yulia. It's a pleasure.
Hello, pleasure to join today.
Looking forward to having an amazing conversation with you. And let's say hi again to ARNAUD, political consultant. Welcome to the program, dear ARNAUD.
Hello, Clarice. It's always a pleasure to participate to your discussions.
And it's a pleasure to have you all to contribute to this very important topic, focusing on public diplomacy and how the Russian Federation has been able to use this, especially in this very controversial times. So we also have a special guest contributing her viewpoint on our topic, which is very relevant, and she is contributing live from Donbass, particularly in Donetsk, and she is the representative of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Foreign Affairs Ministry in Donetsk, by name NATALIA MIKHAILOVA, and I'll be inviting us to listen to to her as she presents her course pertaining our topic for discussion.
Во взаимодействии с западными странами и изменения в подходах к развитию своих внешних связей. В данном ключе публичная дипломатия возымела одно из ключевых значений ввиду того, что активизировались регионы Российской Федерации. И благодаря взаимодействию именно региональному, когда регионы начали ездить за рубеж более активно, нужно отметить, что эта активность увеличилась по сравнению с предыдущими годами более чем на 50%. Соответственно, эта активность принесла и подписание соглашений на уровне регионов. В 2 раза увеличилось количество таких соглашений. Поэтому мы видим в действии как раз эффективное проявление народной дипломатии, когда официальная дипломатия в нынешних условиях перестает столь результативно показывать себя, но тем не менее наши регионы, проявляя активность, конечно же, при непосредственном участии Министерства иностранных дел, которое координирует эту работу, которое подсказывает в столь непростых условиях, какой курс нужно держать во внешнеполитическом вопросе. И, конечно же, вот при такой координации эффективность народной дипломатии зарекомендовала себя очень-очень положительно. Поэтому можно говорить о том, что не произошло той изоляции, на которую были нацелены западные страны в отношении Российской Федерации. Наоборот, наши внешние контакты, они активизировались, они поменяли полярность, полностью трансформировались внешние связи, мы переориентировались на глобальный юг, глобальный восток. Мы сотрудничаем со странами, которые представляют БРИКС, ШОС, АСЕАН и другие страны СНГ, естественно. То есть вот благодаря этой переориентации, благодаря налаженному эффективному взаимодействию и отклику от наших партнеров, мы можем говорить о том, что несмотря на непростую ситуацию с 2022 года, народная дипломатия показала себя очень эффективной. Ну, отчасти я на этот вопрос уже ответила. Конечно же, Министерство иностранных дел Российской Федерации является координирующим органом внешней политики, и благодаря соответствующим нормативным правовым актам, благодаря выстроенной эффективной работе с органами исполнительной власти, государственными органами, внешняя политика Российской Федерации, она идет по утвержденному пути концепции внешней политики Российской Федерации. Конечно же, переориентация произошла ввиду глобальных изменений на международной арене, ввиду санкционного режима по отношению к Российской Федерации. И вот та непростая ситуация, в которой оказалась Российская Федерация, помогла нам активизировать наши силы, мобилизовать их, направить по пути выстраивания эффективного и взаимовыгодного сотрудничества. То есть мы переориентировали свое направление на страны глобального юга, на Азию, в Латинскую Америку. И работа с этими странами показывает, что, во-первых, все наши партнеры заинтересованы в дальнейшем сотрудничестве с Российской Федерацией, что это партнерство никоим образом не пошатнулось, а только масштабировалось. Сейчас больше, если говорить о публичной дипломатии, проводится различных встреч, обменов делегациями, возросло количество мероприятий совместных, проводимых в регионах. Наши регионы при поддержке Министерства иностранных дел Российской Федерации представляют свой экономический, инвестиционный, туристический потенциал перед нашими иностранными партнерами, ездят, презентуют в иностранных государствах себя и заинтересовывают потенциальных инвесторов, заинтересовывают потенциальных возможных партнеров для реализации крупных масштабных проектов. То есть взаимодействие идет, сотрудничество идет, продолжается, набирает обороты, масштабируется. И я думаю, что несмотря на попытки коллективного Запада как-то изолировать Россию, наши усилия и в противостоянии этой политике, и в оптимизации многих процессов, они идут по пути эффективному, по пути, который приносит весомые результаты. Мы видим все, что наши предприятия выходят на новые уровни, заключают различные контракты, и это позволяет нам обретать экономический суверенитет, промышленный суверенитет. Мы укрепляемся и показываем всему миру, что готовы выстоять и противостоять любым рискам, угрозам.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Of course, given the position of the Russian Federation, particularly as far as the foreign ministry is concerned, and of course how it is navigating these hard times using public diplomacy in the Ukrainian crisis. Let's head now to Yulia to actually continue in the same light with Madam Natalia regarding the position of Russia. Yulia, let's have a contextual analysis regarding this topic from you, and particularly the position of Russia, or what Russia has been able to do practically as far as public diplomacy is concerned, and in building its image both at home and abroad.
Well, generally speaking, public diplomacy is almost the only type of diplomacy that was left after the unprecedented several rounds of sanctions that were imposed on the country, blocking all of the possible media resources that even before that could not really compete with the media machines of the United States, of France, and of other Western countries. So all of that was blocked. Official diplomacy was blocked to a great extent, and what we could observe was the fact that embassies were closing. Russian embassies has to limit their activities in Western countries in the first place, and then as a mirror reaction measure, let's say, a lot of embassies and consulates of the Western countries were shut down in Russia, especially when we talk about consulates, the ones that used to be located in the regions. And we see that most of the exchanges that are taking place at the international platforms either do not include Russia or do not include the Western countries. So we see that official diplomacy is very much limited at the moment, and pretty much the only things that were left is the public diplomacy, which is dissemination of information between the people, or using smaller platforms, using social networks, using direct outreach. And at the same time, what we could still observe happening was exchange of declarations, exchange of exclamations using social networks. So to a great extent, the diplomacy was transferred to public diplomacy, and to this distant exchange of messages, distant exchange of public statements, made by the officials or just exchange of restrictive measures from both sides that basically show a complete deterioration of the relationships.
And can we see much relevance in the use of this public diplomacy? In our preamble, we noted the fact that a whole lot of people were very much in the dark pertaining the Ukrainian crisis, and only came to the fore in 2022 when Russia started the special military operation. Now a whole lot of disinformation campaign has happened. So at what percent or level can you place the relevance of public diplomacy in Russia's international standing, particularly with foreign partners?
Well, the tricky part about it is that the majority of the audience, also in the Western countries and maybe even to a greater extent outside of Europe and the United States, just started hearing about Ukraine and about some issues that were taking place with Russia when the special military operation was started in 2022. Well, the actual happening in eastern Ukraine at that point dates back to 2014, but this is something that was not really discussed by the Western media. And if it was, and you can still find the archives of a lot of Western media outlets, including the French and British and German ones, that were talking about Nazi battalions taking part in the anti-terroristic operation, as it was called, in eastern Ukraine, while at the same time this anti-terroristic operation to a great extent was targeting civilians. And there is quite a lot of proof to that. So at the moment, there are quite limited efforts in order to bring the actual information from the ground to a wider audience and to, let's say, what is really sad in terms of freedom of speech and what is really sad in terms of being able to practice the basic civil rights is that a lot of those people, including journalists and experts that do come to Russia to find out the actual situation on the ground, and the ones traveling to the new regions of the Russian Federation and to the conflict zone, then face various kinds of pressure back home, which sometimes results into them losing their jobs, losing their, let's say, reliable public image, and quite a lot of other instruments of pressure that are being applied to them in order to make them look like lunatics, in order to make them look like Kremlin agents and whatsoever else, even though what those people are trying to do is just to practice that public diplomacy and share their opinions and their own observations and so on. So we see that a full-scale information war and a wide variety of pressure instruments are also pointed at them at the moment. But at the same time, those people demonstrating courage and those people demonstrating their desire to see the truth, there are still the biggest and the most important public diplomats in this area. At the same time, just a brief point, at the same time, what we also see happening is that there have been much more ties established between the countries of the global south and Russia, the BRICS countries within the alliance, and many other new, let's say, platforms have been emerging in order to promote relations with the Russian Federation that could be and are in many cases mutually beneficial and based on a different type of relations, comparing to the relations that the countries of the global south would normally have established with the West.
Okay. One last question for you, Yulia, before you go. We know that when President Vladimir Putin was commenting on Russia's perspective pertaining the Ukrainian crisis, he actually underlined that Russia is not fighting Ukraine, but actually fighting the hidden forces behind the crisis. And here we want to define what we call a proxy war. And of course, the Russian side has always maintained that there is no need to go into war with Ukraine, because engaging in a full-blown war with Ukraine is also fighting Russia at the moment. So in line with our topic, which is focusing on public diplomacy as this tool, how or what are the strategies or very practical elements that the Russian Federation has continue to use to ensure that they mitigate the negative effects which are coming as a result of this proxy war?
Well, yes, what Russia has been trying to do, starting from the 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed, was not to interfere much into domestic affairs of the CIS countries, so-called the Commonwealth of Independent States, which is the ex-Soviet Union states. So what was happening in Ukraine was several rounds of escalations and quite a lot of fueling anti-Russian moods among the young people especially, and using all of those NGO instruments and media influence and whatsoever else. But Russia wasn't really active in that area, and it's just not the type of methods that are being used by the Russian Federation, not to mention that when you compare the budgets that were spent on this from the side of USAID and other organizations, and what Russia could have possibly done, you will see that it was even useless to start this competition. So what happened in 2014 was that the escalation in Ukraine has reached its peak, and after the coup d'etat, the elected president, the legitimately elected President Yanukovych, offered a let's say a deal, as it's fashionable to say right now, to the opposition, and the deal was sealed also in presence of European officials. And the further negotiations and the Minsk Accords and many other legal documents were also signed by them, in not just in their presence but also by them, which meant that they were supposed to guarantee that those were to be followed. So Russia was using that approach and was trying to move within this framework for quite a while, and only 8 years into pretty much a civil war that was taking place in eastern Ukraine, and after some of those regions fought for their right to their own, let's say, decision-making and sovereignty, Russia intervened with its military force. But the story known to the wide audience only starts in 2022, completely ignoring the fact that there were several years of civilians dying and of Russia not being actively involved into those matters, aside for the diplomatic track and aside for some small steps that were taken on the ground as well in order to provide for a great extent humanitarian aid and assist the Russian-speaking population that was limited in their rights, and even in simple things like access to water and access to medical equipment and whatsoever else.
Okay, thank you so much for your insight, dear Yulia. We continue the discussion with our other guests around, and think we can have the African perspective from you, Professor MAURICE OKOLI, and you're joining us live from Moscow in Russia. We know that since the start of the military operation, a whole lot of been happening or has been happening, patterning Russia-Africa ties, as some pundits were of the viewpoint that, of course, the fact that the grain deal and other aspects did not work, which indirectly affected the African continent, is already some sort of a call for caution among the African countries. And in line with Russia's public diplomacy and standing with Africa in terms of their bilateral or multilateral relations, how can you place Russia's position, please?
Thank you for the question. Let me start by saying that Russia has, public diplomacy has been crucial in Russia engagement since the special operation in Ukraine. The way I understand public diplomacy, or the way I can refer it to, is an effort or practice by engaging with foreign audience or countries in order to strengthen ties, build trust, cooperation between nations, states and countries. Since the conflict, Russia has tremendously used this method to engage the public. As regards to Africa, you know very well that some of the African countries that are in BRICS, and also they are part of Global South. So when this thing happened, when the crisis started, there was a widespread condemnation of Russia by Western countries. But when you look at the response of the BRIC nation, where you have some African countries, or the Global South, where you have some African countries, the response was a kind of a mixed bag. Some decided to maintain neutrality, and some decided to throw their support to back Russia. So that's in terms of approach to Africa. It is also that mixed bags. You know, one thing you have to know that Russia has a very great sympathy towards, Africa has a great sympathy towards Russia.
Sure.
Because you could remember during the Soviet Union, you know, during the time Africans were fighting for their independence, the Soviet Union then provided military, economic, and political assistance to all freedom movements in Africa that are fighting their independence. That single gesture has provided a reservoir of goodwill for Russia after the collapse of Soviet Union. So when this military operation started, there was a sympathy for Russia. And Russia has, through this public diplomacy, engaged Africans. And Africans understand, you know, what is happening. When you look at how the whole problem started, it started with the overthrow of elected government in Kyiv, Yanukovych being backed by some forces. After the overthrow, the people that came to power started the punitive measures against the Russian-speaking area of Ukraine, I mean Donbass and Lugansk, preventing them from using the Russian language. Preventing them from, you know, excising their, you know, their cultural activities. You know, in fact, there was an attempt to ban the Russian language.
Okay.
Based on that, they revolted, you know, against the government in Kyiv.
Sure.
And that revolt made them to kind of fight back. It continued like that until when, the Russian government, you know, after all efforts to mitigate against the problem, including Minsk 1, Minsk 2, failed. Russia has to move in for military, special military operation. And Africa, in line of what has happened, understand actually that it is a proxy war, you know,
Okay.
by some group of people against Russia, but using Ukraine as a kind of cannon fodder.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. Coming back to you subsequently, as we go now to India to actually present this one to Madam Purnima, and then looking at the implications of Russia's special military operation involvement in Ukraine, and also its relationships within the global community and BRICS. particularly in line with the public diplomacy, dear PURNIMA, can we attest that it has been indeed a toll, positive one for Russia to ensure that there is still that proximity between the countries of the BRICS and Russia, and also the global community?
Very good evening from India. CLARISSE, I told you earlier, and I am happy to come on your channel always. So it is really very interesting topic today, because we are seeing that 3.5 years Russia is facing very big crisis time, and it is a dark time for Russia when sanctions were imposed in 2022. So it is really a difficult time, and when sanctions imposed and war started between Ukraine and Russian borders, Russia covered from all sides, because Russia was having so many issues at a time, because fake media and Western media was anchoring so much against Russia, and it was not true news coming in BRICS countries, or you can say in Eastern world or global South. So people were not understanding, and governments will not understanding what will happen. Because in the first phase, Western media and fake media announced that Russian army and Russian weapons are not able to fight with Ukraine weapons and Ukrainian army. So this version was coming, and it was really horrid and shocking. But in first phase, Russia media was also not able to cross their narratives what were imposed by the Western media. So Russian media was also weak at a time, but slowly, step by step, Russian media and Russian foreign ministry make the strategy and reform their strategic news system by digital communication with friendly countries and their traditional relation with all countries where people-to-people diplomacy succeed. US and NATO were saying so many things. They put up the sanctions, they put up a decree on President Putin that if he will go anywhere, he will be arrested. So non-aligned countries like India and other countries, they stand together and they take the veto power and they absent from the voting in United Nations. This was the first step of friendly countries, non-aligned countries and BRICS countries, where they stand internationally with Russia. After that, they make the strategies and they come together, BRICS countries, in the trade side, because Russian very big money was frozen in Western banks and their trade was stopped. So this was new horrific situation for Russia, how to continue their trade in all countries. So BRICS countries created new routes to develop trade relation, and they are continuing from other trade lines and in local currencies, and so many new diplomatic relations and people-to-people contacts were utilized, and Russia sustained their trade relation and supplying of oil and gas to all countries. So this was really very important to say that people-to-people diplomacy sustained in such a dark time. And India stand with Russia always. We are having traditional ties, and our Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited to Russia in sanction time, and Russian President Vladimir Putin honored him as a special friend. And this is really massive for whole world that India and Russia are the traditional friends and they are standing together in all time. So India purchased oil from Russia, and that support Russian economy and Russian oil industry in this negative time. And Russia oil build up new India-Russia trade relation, because it increased more than 30 billion trade relation between India and Russia, and it is a remarkable, and it is a proof that in bad time two good friends can create the history. So we were not having such big trade relation before, but during this war time, we created new historic trade relation between Russia and India, and we continue the supply to Europe. So European countries are depending on Russian energy, and they are also facing so many problems. But NATO intervention and US sanction really create problems for all countries.
Okay.
But in such time, BRICS countries and India really support Russian economy and Russian diplomatic relation in multipolar world.
Indeed, diplomatic relations in multipolar world, dear Purnima. And I think let's go now back to Russia to join ARNAUD DEVELAY. We've listened to the preliminary insights or analysis from distinguished guest ARNAUD, and now we want to come back to you. When we're looking at a whole lot of things evolving or the developments around the Ukrainian crisis, we want to note the intention by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky to have Ukraine in the NATO organization. We're also looking at the various sanctions coming from the United States of America, and of course the arrest warrant, which actually is limiting President Putin, especially in attending very important diplomatic missions. Like we already know that he may not be part of the impending BRICS summits in Brazil this month. So now let's look at how Russia's public diplomacy has helped the country to probably respond to threats or maybe retaliation from the NATO, the European Union, and other state-sponsored propaganda geared towards tarnishing the international standing of the Russian Federation.
Yes, well, you do well to mention the importance of public diplomacy, as was mentioned repeatedly by the other guests. It's interesting to note that the rise of public diplomacy has been somehow inversely proportional to the intensity of censorship in the West, and the institutional attempt to control the flow of information and to make it so that only one particular view is expressed in as far as Russia's ulterior motive in Ukraine. And what this has led to, ironically, is a thirst for information at the level of the citizen, the average citizen on the street. Who, let's recall, let's keep in mind, is directly and adversely affected by those policies, because the billions of dollars that for going back to 2022 and most likely to 2014, billions of dollars have been expanded at the expense of his own needs, at the society's own needs to improve their conditions. And so to the extent the result of this deterioration in life quality is now something that the average citizen can feel in his day-to-day routine, there's been a thirst to try to understand what is the fundamental reality on the ground, bearing on the Ukraine conflict, but not only. What are the Russian ties to Ukraine, historically speaking, culturally speaking? What has transpired the last 30 years? How did we get to where we are? How does the official version of Western nations stand up to the sequencing of events between what was promised 30 years ago? Some would say, well, it wasn't in writing, but there's a slew of elements which, when taken into their entirety and their globality, tends to establish the fact that, yes, there were guarantees that were given 30 years ago in 1990, February 1990 precisely. And this, among those guarantees, those promises, were that NATO was not to expand 1 inch eastward. And for those of us who've been around long enough, we've seen waves after wave of NATO expansion, putting this promise to dust. And so the Russian Federation, if anything, retroactively has shown itself to be extremely patient and somewhat measured, probably more measured than some Western countries for 1/10 of the situation that Russia has faced, to be honest. And so now people are starting to understanding, you know, I always tend to say nature finds a way. And the more you try to suppress key information, trying to shut down people's legitimate questions on the issues of our time, the more those very people will take it upon themselves, for lack of a better word, to provide alternate media and try to establish bridges with the people that are, you know, on the other side of the narrative, in order to try to increase understanding, and in so doing, over time, because it's a process, it's an organic process. Obviously, we're not, we civil society, financed to the tune of what the corporate media operates with in the West. But over time, and especially owing to the empirical reality on the ground, which itself is subjected to its own narrative, i.e., we are winning, Russia is losing. We saw again recently what happened with the exchange of bodies and what you might call it, dead soldiers. And to the extent only 6 months ago, Volodymyr Zelensky was saying that the grand total of Ukrainian soldiers fallen during the conflict was somewhat around 43,000 soldiers. When we see that altogether between the 6,060 soldiers Russia handed over to Ukraine, after some delays, it should be noted, plus the additional proposal of the Ministry of Defense to provide an additional 2,000 to 3,000, we're now somehow in the neighborhood of close to 10,000, which is already 25% of this 43,000 grand total. So little by little, the narrative, no matter how financed, well financed, and hammered into people's brains in the West might be, the reality is implacable, and all we have to do is report it, repeat it, educate people, not being afraid to answer legitimate questions that they may have, follow-up questions that they may also have on such and such issue. Educate and educate and educate. And sooner or later, you know, you will get this critical mass. We don't need to have 90% of the Western public to understand the realities on the ground. Merely 10 to 15% of educated people will be enough to, in the wake of the current economic also downfall, collapse that the West, owing to those foolish policies, is experiencing. You know, those 15% of informed citizenry will, over time, make a difference at the political level.
The political level, I stay with you, Arnaud Gavali. Let's look at the implications of this and rate at the level of that Russia is navigating this. We quite know that Viktor Orban was almost penalized for actually being so very practical and categorical on the position of Ukraine and the consequences of this crisis in Ukraine. And we also recently during the NATO summit saw that Ukrainian crisis was not a priority as it was the last year, and of course a whole lot of information circulating across various media organs of how you know, NATO countries or leaders were more focused on how they can boost the organization probably and tackle some internal wranglings. Now, can we at this moment say that the strategic public diplomacy employed by the Russian Federation under the leadership of Vladimir Putin has actually helped in shaping and even providing a greater space for the Federation in the time of of multipolarity that is actually being the philosophy which is occupying a whole lot of the media landscape and even political discourse, particularly in the global south and probably BRICS nations.
Well, it's a good point. Ironically, I would say that it is NATO land at large, which has, through its policies of unfriendliness, some would say Russophobia, and I think that term is not exaggerated in any way, shape, or form. Some irrational hatred for anything related to the Russian world, or the Slavic world at large, as if anything Russian or Slavic related had to disappear somehow. On its face is irrational and has somehow caught the attention of a lot of people, including a lot of people in the global south, to be sure, which understand one thing or two about discrimination and double standards. But what I would want to say is that those very irrational policies, have driven Russia to somehow completely reconfigure its geopolitical environments, whether on the economic level or the political level, and rediscover somehow a whole set of relationships which had, to be sure, for a lot of them existed for decades, but contrary to some popular belief, remained only to be reactivated and reinvented and rejuvenated, and to such extent now that for the last 3 years we've seen somehow a momentum being created by what I call the direct effect of the special military operation, which it's, to me, and I've said, and this is the term and that I've used a few times already, it's a global insurrection, essentially. Mm-hmm. And to the extent a lot of countries might have felt scared, let's put it this way, afraid to confront the hegemon in the West, Russia showing itself willing to stand up and defend its legitimate interest in its near abroad, is something that has inspired and galvanized everybody else in a way that would have been unimaginable a mere 4 years ago. And it's important also to note that through this process, Russia itself has gained a lot of confidence, which it might have been lacking 4 years ago, and the belief in oneself is fundamental in forging a path to a different international reality and a realignment which the world urgently needs anyway. So, but we should not, at the same time, rest on our laurels, because the West has this inherent propension to adapt quickly and realign and retool and keep pouring huge sums of money at the problem until somehow it senses that it's reacquired the initiative. So we should always remain cognizant of this reality, this anthropological reality, in as far as the West a way of going about maintaining this hegemony, because it does not conceive itself any other way than as an hegemon. And what the special military operation has accomplished, no less, is to somehow slightly open ajar a door or window which pertains or purports to show a post-Western world, a world where a 500-year hegemony is coming to an end. And so you should really keep that in mind. The West is going to fight to the death to postpone this post-Western world. It's a matter of life or death. And so we have to understand now that it's a fight to the finish. We will always, of course, privilege diplomacy and hope that, you know, conditions, contemporaneous conditions, allow for a somehow bringing down the tension to manageable levels, so that the West can be convinced to see that it has a future. Because as the president said during the BRICS summit in Kazan, when someone queried him about the BRICS currency, we are not building any kind of currency as against the dollar. The dollar has a vocation to remain as one of the currency, but not the only one. And so to the extent some countries in the West, you know, modified their stance toward the global South and toward the multipolar model, any one of them, to the extent they call into question, for instance, their membership in NATO, which has revealed itself to be an offensive tool against the sovereignty of states from the global South, but not only, there will be a seat for them. Of course, there's no reason to come back to the bipolar rivalries of the Cold War. But there are very powerful interests in the West which do not want this world to happen. And so they will create all kinds of narratives. They will build all kinds of walls, I would say digital walls today, to somehow artificially construct a dichotomy which allows them to draw some legitimacy in as far as their own population are concerned. And this is where, you know, the crux of the matter really stands, is that war for the minds of those people that are still trapped there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arnaud Davely. And continuing with you, Professor Maurice Okoli, you know, when the special military operation started across the African continent, and I will first of all actually resonate a viewpoint which has been shared by one pundit in Africa, noting that it is always imperative for the African continent or African leaders to understand how global politics works, to be able to shape its own narratives. And now we are looking at public diplomacy. To an extent, let's analyze how Russia's public diplomacy faced with the Ukrainian crisis, which is largely a proxy war, has helped to probably bring about a renaissance or a wind of change across the African continent. Today, everywhere they're talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, revolutionary countries across the African continent. Can we, to an extent, say that the impetus was drawn out from Russia's diplomacy in line with the ongoing Ukraine crisis?
Thank you for the question. Let me start by saying that where Africans are today, they've been there before. During the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the West, the Soviet Union was led by Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was led by Warsaw Pact, while Soviet Union was led by NATO. Because of that clash between these two giants, African countries suffered. In order to mitigate their suffering, they formed what we call non-aligned movements, and that gave them a breathing space. Today, you know, there is that struggle again between the West and, you know, through the Ukrainian war, and then Russia on the other side. You know, so Africans having experience view it not to take side, but to maintain neutrality. If you watch African countries, you know, has attempted to mediate, you know, in the problem by going to Kyiv and going to Africa. They did everything within their means to mediate. But as you can see, the war continued. Why did they want to mediate? There are so many things, you know. The war in Ukraine has affected Africa badly, especially in terms of grain. You know, Ukraine is one of the largest suppliers of grain, and Russia also. So the starting of this special operation has contribute to the increment of price in Africa and other continents, like economic instability. So what Africans are trying to do, the way they view the whole thing, as they are watching, they are seeing the picture very clearly, that this whole thing is not about Ukraine. That is a proxy war by NATO, using Ukraine as a cannon fodder. That the essence of the war is attempt to weaken Russia economically, politically, and militarily. Let me say that the sanction that was placed in Russia is unprecedented in the history of mankind. The sanction was meant to crush Russia economically, politically, and militarily. But unfortunately, it did not work. It did not work because, number one, the world has changed. The world is not unipolar as it used to be. Now, economic activities have shifted to Asia. There is India, there is China, and other countries. It's no more the world where the Western countries, monopolize the economic activities. So with that was what helped Russia. And also, there is no way China or Russia can involve in following the sanction, because in India, for example, depend on Russia for a certain extent on their military needs. So also China. So there are a kind of interdependency. So that's why so many countries refuse. When the push comes to shove, those countries, first of all, put their interest first. And look at it also from this perspective. When you look at the import of Russia from European countries, it's barely 10.5%. From America, it's barely 5.5%. What is Russia is importing from European is consumables. What are they importing from America? It's the same consumable. These are goods that you can easily replace. But when you look at the nature of Russian export to this country, it's energy and energy-intensive product of energy and energy-intensive industries. Oil, gas, aluminium, nuclear fuel, fertilizer, grain, and so many other things. And these are items you can't easily replace, unlike the consumables. So placing this in sanction has adverse effect. It never scored what was meant, to achieve. First of all, one of the things also they aim toward this sanction is to crush the economy of Russia, thereby making Russian citizens very poor. And when they poor and hungry, they will rise against their government. But this thing never happened. What you see is reverse effect. This sanction made Russians to rally, rally behind around the flag, what I can call rallying around the flag. They never, instead of putting the annoyance on their government, they're exporting that annoyance on the adversary that put that sanction. So they never achieved that aim of trying to cause disaffection within the country, thereby making the citizens of the country to rise against their government. It never worked. Today, when it comes to Russia, you can see that you go to the shelf, things are normal, people are feeding, people are not hungry, So all those things failed. For Africa, looking at those things also is a lesson that they have to, look at inward and try and put their house in order. Because African countries, as of now, a lot of them are having economic problems. I don't see the reason why such a continent, one of the richest, continents, with such economic problem. Although with the help of Russia, you can see it, some of this high region are taking, their destiny into their hand by trying to get hold of their natural resources, by trying to get hold of their affairs. Although it's difficult, but with Russia also on the horizon, providing that security they needed to take the actions, to take such actions. They've been able to do those things, and other countries are watching. I think this is the starting of the new, revolution in Africa. If you can see the way Ibrahim Traore has done it in Burkina Faso. It's wonderful. Look at Niger. Niger was, France was mining uranium, in Niger, selling it in the international market at $200. Why is paying peanut to Niger? With the season of that mining, this thing, the economic output has increased. So 800 of exploitation and subjugation of Africa by the Western countries. I think there is a sign that is coming to an end, because people are not happy. People are getting up. People are looking at it, and when you look at Africa, it's nothing to write home about. A lot of countries, they come, they take charge of mineral, oil, gold, mine. A typical example is Congo. Congo is one of the richest countries in the world. But when you get there, it's in a sorry state. Even the government cannot provide something without life become torment. Elementary thing, instead of giving them, helping them, you see that they assemble all kind of weapons that are killing each other. So how long will this kind of thing continue? I don't know. Thank you.
Question: how long will this continue? And of course, how can countries continue to use public diplomacy to be able to navigate those controversial times? And we now want to look at how the assessment of the effectiveness of Russian soft power initiatives in mitigating diplomatic fallout as a result of the conflict in Ukraine, particularly with you, Purnima.
During last 3 years, Russia reformed its public diplomacy, and Russia created new programs through Foreign Ministry of Russia and Cultural Ministry and Youth Ministry and Rosotridnichestvo programs. So it really give new impact to Russian image in the world. First of all, the narrative of Western media and fake media become fused, because Russia is standing very strongly and overcome on international stage last year in 2024 after Kazan BRICS summit. And we observed that all countries representatives were there, and more than 33 countries participated actively, and President Vladimir Putin did bilateral meetings with 22 countries, including China and India. And the most important magnet was the visit of Mr. Gitter, United Nations General Secretary. Russia was in sanction, but United Nations Secretary General visited to Russia at Kazan in BRICS Summit. It proved that Russian Kazan's BRICS Summit is international event, and it is magnet for international community. So this was the important first mark for international community that Russia overcome, and President Vladimir Putin proved that he is friend of friends, and friendly countries can always come to Russia and they can continue their relations. So among that, Africa, CIS countries, Asian countries, Latin American countries were present. Even some countries of Europe were also present, and Europe was also wanted to dialogue with BRICS. So this was real success, and Russia also take the benefit of BRICS summit at Kazan to declare their interest in international trade, international new economic structure, and BRICS countries also supported Russia at the time of sanction by bilateral trade and local currency trade and settlement of the cross-border funds. So this is the important thing which rise during last 3 years sanction time, and Russia give new landmark and new routes to the BRICS trade, and BRICS country also got new routes to do their trades, and friendly countries of BRICS who are coming up as new member like Indonesia, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE. So they are also getting new space to say their international interest, because in European Union and United Nations, they were not getting equal rights and equal respect. So they are also interested in the BRICS magnet. And above all, the new Institute of New Development Bank in BRICS also playing very important role by giving infrastructure loans to the BRICS countries and BRICS plus countries. BRICS countries created new agro bank to supply grain. So green agriculture is a new mission of BRICS, where we will exchange the grain to overcome the poverty and food security to all people of the BRICS countries. So this is very important action, and above all, Russia is very rich in energy, and Russia is supplying good energy resources to Africa as well as BRICS countries. So this is also a very important initiative during last 3 years of sanctions from Russia. And Russia also helping its domestic trade and domestic relations with foreign countries, because banks were under sanction. Many big bank and international bank of Russia were under sanction and their money was freezed. So it was a very difficult time to trade under the dollar system. But Russia sophisticatedly and step by step created new regime with BRICS countries and friendly countries, and de-dollarization was anchored, and countries started to trade in their local currencies. And we saw that Russian trade increased during last 3 years. So we learned that in bad time we can create new solution and new routes. So this is a proof of friendship and public diplomacy and good stable politics between BRICS countries. And I could say that BRICS countries are becoming magnet for Europe also, and we initiated dialogue at Sochi on 15th November 2024, where many senators from Europe and experts came to Sochi, and they were also interested and they were understanding that BRICS is stretching relation with Europe. But we clarify to them that long back, what is Europe? Europe is a group of nations. When European countries decided that they will work together and they will have common currency, common security, and common trade. This was the Europe. This was the meaning of Europe. Similarly, now in Eastern world, BRICS countries are rising. They want to do their trade together. They want to stable their politics by new democratic institution, because we observe that Donbass, Zaporozhia, Mariupol, these 4 regions, they come to Russia not as a under the government system. They are autonomous. Russian government give them freedom, but Russian government providing them economic and defense security. So they are having their own foreign ministry, economic ministry. They are independently taking decisions. So this is a new democratic values, because we observed in the past that European countries in Africa make their colonies, and they track their resources to European countries. But now Russia gave new democratic values, new economic values to BRICS countries and BRICS friendly countries. So it is a new model, we can say, and we fully understand, and all European countries are also understanding that BRICS is also raising parallel to the Europe, and if Europe and BRICS together work, then there is no problem. And Europe need to learn that African, Asian and CIS countries are together, they are educated and they need equal rights, and they can solve their economic and security problems themselves by new alliances and with their new values and with new cooperation. So Europe should not stretch from BRICS and Eastern world. They should cooperate. So I think all problems can be resolved, and I hope that new cooperation from UAE, because UAE is rising with new economic structure. They are good in infrastructure. They are good in energy. So they are also a part of new economic strategies, because Islamic funds are having different rules. Because as we observe, international financial institutions, they are having different percentage rate of interest and different project cooperation system, but Islamic funds are having different laws. So this fusion of BRICS funds and Islamic funds can create new revolution, and digital currencies are in important segment, and exchanges are easy. All countries are accepting digital currency. Recently, I heard, I was in St. Petersburg Economic Forum in 2025, and I heard that Russia is digitalizing ruble. So it will be very easy to exchange with Islamic countries, with BRICS countries, and India is also in front line to digitalize rupee, and we are exchanging through UPI, and BRICS currencies are also getting balance through their local currency exchange and border cross funding system, and we are working without dollar interventions. So this is new creation, and I hope all this intervention during sanctions and after COVID and during wartime, and now Israel and Iran war is at height, and many trade routes closed, and lot of ships are standing on the ports to supply in Iran and Israel. So this new war system and dark time will create new light of hope, new light of cooperation, friendship, and new economic and political cooperations will rise. So I hope we are changing older system, and we are coming towards new system, new world order.
Indeed,
and Russia is the key player, and Russia is changing the time of this new economic model.
Indeed, Purnima, we are in a moment of new dynamics or shifting alliances. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that you're onto this cohesive knowledge sharing program, which is Global Insight, proposed to you by GLOBUS in partnership with the Pan-African Media TV, and we continue to bring to you a clearer understanding of how the world works and how we can navigate the new changes happening across the global world with a positive mind, welcoming new ideologies, new systems that will benefit mankind in general. We're going back to Natalia Mikhailova, why she actually highlights some of the initiatives of the Russian government, and also looking at the challenges which they have recorded so far during this controversial moment. Just to note that, like Yulia noted in her discuss earlier, the Federation has always indulged even in media, media exhibition, I beg your pardon, or spray, to be able to attest or ascertain the real stakes on the ground to ensure that there is somehow an objective presentation of the situation in the Donbass. Without much ado, we go back to get Natalia Mikhailova, who I said already, representative of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Donetsk, the Donbass.
Санкциям, что потенциал нашей страны огромен, и благодаря этому, и благодаря сплоченности и мобилизации усилий русского населения, российских граждан, мы можем многого достичь, можем идти вперед, показывая своим примером, что однополярность на сегодняшний день в мировых масштабах, она изжила себя, эта модель требует реформирования, поэтому вот те сложившиеся условия, они демонстрируют необходимость создания многополярного мира, и актуальность вот этого вопроса сейчас, наверное, уже не вызывает ни у кого сомнений, поэтому мы подстраиваемся под новую систему международных отношений. Я имею в виду мы, это весь мир. Это те условия и, наверное, то время, когда мы только успеваем приспосабливаться к новым условиям, потому что однополярность, она сама себя естественным образом изживает, и мы видим, как на наших глазах строится совершенно новая архитектура международных отношений. Да, действительно, очень много инициатив со стороны Российской Федерации по поводу отстаивания своих позиций, демонстрации своих позиций. Но я хотела бы сначала немного сказать об официальных инструментах, которые используются. Это, конечно же, представление нашей позиции на площадках Организации Объединенных Наций, в Совете Безопасности ООН. Необходимо отметить, что Российская Федерация неоднократно выступала инициатором заседаний Совета Безопасности ООН по формуле Ария. И на этих заседаниях зачастую присутствовали жертвы киевского режима, которые могли рассказать о том, какие ужасные видели вещи своими глазами, какие преступления совершались преступниками украинской армии, военные преступления. И, конечно же, учитывая, что эти преступления не имеют сроков давности, мы не просто используем различные площадки для того, чтобы свою позицию заявить. Мы прилагаем максимум усилий, чтобы в дальнейшем вот эти преступления не остались безнаказанными, чтобы преступники военные обязательно понесли заслуженное справедливое наказание. Ввиду этого Российская Федерация, естественно, отстаивает свои интересы, интересы своих граждан на различных международных судебных площадках. И я надеюсь, что это принесет свои положительные результаты в дальнейшем. Что касается народной дипломатии, то здесь тоже может быть очень масса примеров, когда организуются различные телемосты, круглые столы, конференции с участием международной общественности. Один из ярких примеров – это проведение различных фотовыставок в русских домах и российских посольствах в иностранных государствах. Например, фотовыставка «Мы обвиняем», которая проходит по инициативе посла по особым поручениям Мирошника и фотожурналиста Винявского, уже проехала путь более 30 стран, затронув государства практически всех континентов мира. И США, и Турция, Индия, Вьетнам, Камбоджа, Египет и так далее, и так далее, и так далее. Это те государства, в которых эта фотовыставка уже побывала. И эта фотовыставка демонстрирует вот те вот зверства киевского режима, которые он совершает по отношению к мирным гражданам Российской Федерации, к мирным гражданам Донбасса, к мирным гражданам прифронтовых регионов Российской Федерации. К сожалению, кадров, которые ужасают своим зверством, все больше и больше, и фотовыставка обновляется, поэтому я уверена, что она проедет еще не один десяток стран, продемонстрирует эти зверства. Помимо этой фотовыставки, конечно, очень много и других, которые организовываются и внутри государства, и на различных международных мероприятиях, которые проводятся в Российской Федерации. Стоит отметить, что внутри государства у нас также создан Международный общественный трибунал. Международный общественный трибунал был создан в 1922 году, и Его задача – это сбор доказательств военных преступлений и предоставление в дальнейшем в различные судебные инстанции, международные в том числе. И стоит отметить, что состав этого международного общественного трибунала – это общественники со всего мира. Это правозащитники, это эксперты, это историки и так далее и тому подобное. То есть представлен весь мир в составе этого международного общественного трибунала. И стоит заметить, что как раз сегодня они представили очередной доклад, который говорит об ужасных фактах нарушения прав человека, об ужасных фактах и зверствах вооруженных сил Украины, совершенных по отношению к нашим гражданам в Донецкой Народной Республике, в городе Дзержинске. Вот буквально сегодня только вышел отчет. Конечно же, то, что демонстрируется в этом отчете, это уже ужасает, потому что невозможно представить, как вообще такие можно совершать преступления. И я, конечно же, надеюсь, что обязательно виновные в этих преступлениях понесут справедливое, но суровое наказание, потому как сражаются они против мирных граждан, безоружных граждан, которые не могут противостоять им и чувствуют сегодня свою безнаказанность. Хочется, чтобы такого никогда, нигде во всем мире не повторялось. Спасибо вам огромное. Было приятно пообщаться и готова в дальнейшем обсуждать такие весьма наболевшие для нас вопросы. Спасибо. Всем всего доброго.
MIKHAILOVA, thank you so much for your insight. Coming back to you, dear Arnaud, I would appreciate if you briefly comment on the points advocated by Natalia MIKHAILOVA regarding especially the reports pertaining human rights violations and other stakes in Donetsk.
Yes, well, I think Natalia MIKHAILOVA made a very good point that needs to be stressed and reinforced. We are unfortunately, and one could say that this is somewhat the byproduct of the unipolar world, we have been facing a complete collapse of the international rule of law for the last 25, 30 years now. It's been a progressive but steady collapse, whether we are talking about the foundation of the UN Charter. We've seen how some of the languages on resolutions were twisted out of context, manipulated in a cynical fashion to justify wars of aggressions against the sovereignty of states in general. And so the UN in that respect has been under assault and becoming a tool in an hybrid warfare context of Western hegemonic agenda. And this is very unfortunate because when a powerful state such as the United States initiates a departure, a violation of international law, it tends to have a spiraling effect and a dissuading effect in as far as other states following international law. So this is the legacy, unfortunately, of the unipolar moment, is that international law, or the lofty goals that were established in the wake of World War II, and that includes the decisions and judgment arrived at by the International Tribunal of Nuremberg and Tokyo, we are seeing today, despite the accumulation of international judicial bodies such as the ICTY or ICTR or Extraordinary Chambers of Cambodia, and more recently the International Criminal Court, we are sorry to say that those mechanisms, those organs have been coming under Western control and have been somehow used to promote vendetta, international vendettas, and geopolitical agendas at the expense of a measure of justice at the very least. I'm not saying that justice is always reached out, but there has to be at least an attachment, a commitment to the due process and the rule of law, so we can attain a measure of justice. And to the extent prosecuting bodies only focus on certain kinds of individuals while somehow allowing others to get away with the commission of really egregious crimes at international law, this poses a big problem. Now I would say that this is not in and of itself a reason for the Russian Federation to succumb to the temptation of departing from international law. And to its credit, the Federation has always been extremely legalistic and has always manifested repeatedly its attachment to the existing international mechanism, be they UN agencies, UN Security Council resolution, so on and so forth. When it comes down to the issue of war crimes in Ukraine, yes, to be sure, those exactions, those crimes do not suffer from the statute of limitation. But I would add just that while we have extremely well and thoroughly documented body of evidence bearing on crimes committed by members of the Ukrainian armed forces, I think it is fundamental to understand and to reaffirm that those crimes would not have been made possible without Western curators. And in that sense, while there will be procedures to prosecute and convict some of the underlings involved in the commission of those crimes, it is important for the public to understand that a trial one day, at some point, it might be at the level of public diplomacy to begin with, before it becomes somewhat of a more formal official body, will have to address the criminal responsibility of Western curators in what has happened in Ukraine. There are many names, well-documented statements that have been made, and those people are only voicing out their involvement predicated on the notion that they will never face accountability for their role in the furtherance of those crimes. It is time to really have them start understanding that to the extent they might not one day in this lifetime face justice, they will not be allowed to move about and travel as they please. And their name will be somehow written in blood, in as far as the collective consciousness is concerned. It is important, if the multipolar world is to come into its own, there has to be a threshold moment, there has to be a seminal accounting for what has happened in Ukraine. That was the case at the close of World War II, and it will have to be something that comes to pass if we want to bury the unipolar moment once and for all.
Thank you so much, Arnaud Davely. Coming back to you, Professor Okoli, we continue to look at the narratives surrounding Russia's public diplomacy, how it's affecting, of course, its foreign policy standing, particularly within countries in the African continent and elsewhere in the world. While you were talking about probably the Cold War, how NATO was led by the US, and then the Warsaw Pact actually led by the Soviet Union, we continue to look at how the collapse of the Soviet Union has actually brought us to what we are today talking about, the Ukrainian crisis, and seeing the involvement of global powers in this particular crisis, where it has brought some sort of mixed reactions pertaining the standing of Russia, and that is what we continue to analyze in the course of this program to get clear and objective analysis or discourse pertaining the narratives on the ground. Now, let's look at how these divergent narratives about the Russian or Ukraine crisis between probably Putin's public diplomacy and internal politics, how it reflects in it the fluctuation in domestic support for the government. Do you think that the special military operation in 2022, which is still ongoing till now, has affected maybe negatively Putin's standing in Russia?
Thank you for the question. Let me start, a bit, to give the question a bit historical perspective. As I said earlier, the West was led by NATO, while the Warsaw Pact was led by Soviet Union.
Sure.
So after the collapse of the Soviet Union and eventually the collapse of Warsaw Pact, there emerged a unipolar world led by America. And this problem started when Gorbachev came to power and started a program called Perestroika and Glasnost. That Perestroika and Glasnost led to all these problems. In fact, he ended up losing power. He became a president of a country that doesn't exist. When Boris Yeltsin, the president of Belarus and that of Kazakhstan, came back and buried Soviet Union. So Gorbachev found himself as a president without country, so he has to resign. So all these things happened unplanned. And since that program, it has been suffering. There was a war in Chechnya, there was crisis, so many things happening. Even this present Ukrainian crisis is a result of that perestroika. Because if divorce was organized in a normal way, there will be demarcation for borders and everything. But this thing came spontaneously. So what I'm trying to say here is that with the emergence of a unipolar world, the West had it.
Yeah.
The agreement that was made that after the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, and that the NATO will not expand inch towards the east, but that agreement was not maintained. You see, wave of expansion, to the extent that presently Russia is just surrounded, with NATO country. Look at the pre-Baltic, that was part of the Soviet Union, which are a member of NATO. They at the forehead, the way they are hawkish, the way they, it's a small country, poking, Russians at the eye. It's also unbearable. So what I'm trying to say here is that with all these things happening, definitely this is the result we get. Because when the Ukrainian crisis started, it does not start just like that. Some people say it's unprovoked. No, it's not unprovoked.
Absolutely.
There is no smoke without fire. There are history. There was Yanukovych who was overthrown. After Yanukovych came a group of people. After a group of people, the people in Donbass revolted. There was a mediation to stop the process, to peacefully resolve the process, whereby what they are asking is only to allow them to use their language, allow them to, have their culture, and little autonomy. This thing led to Minsk 1, Minsk 2, everything collapsed. It was revealed that all this Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 was a ploy to allow, the other side to prepare, for attack.
Yeah.
So all these things, there are deceits everywhere. So what I'm trying to say, when you look at the conflict, the way it is going, it's becoming even more dangerous, because I don't know how long Russia will hold, because this is kind of many countries now against one country, sort of through Ukraine. I think the sensible people in the world have to get down get their heads down to resolve the problem before it gets to something else.
Absolutely.
So when you fundamentally also look at the whole system, that I mean Russia is navigating, it's not easy. I don't see any country in the world who will face Russia, what Russia is facing and survive. One president saying I don't know how many, it's uncountable, whether it's 18 package and all these things. It's such that, you know, it's becoming unbearable. For African countries looking at it, you know, they did what they should do by trying to intervene, trying to mediate. But that their mediation never yielded results. And also through Global South, where Africans are present, they're also trying to, do what they can do. Yes, Russian diplomacy is playing a crucial role, because it was through this Russian diplomacy they were able to let the world actually know what is happening. That this thing that is happening never started in February 2022.
Yeah.
That it started far way back. You know,
Yeah.
I can remember the problem between the Donbass and Kyiv. They lost 14,000 people. You know, it was at this stage that Russians trying to intervene, and through this diplomacy, they've been able to let the world know their intervention is only to save the Russian-speaking population to
yeah.
Ukraine. It has not got anything to do with taking Ukrainian land. When you look at Soviet Union, there were 15 countries that came out of Soviet Union. Russia never, you know, there are smaller ones. If Russian want to expand, as some narrative are being put, they could have taken all those countries, but they don't need it. You know, what they want is security. You know, because when such a, war machine is moving towards their territory, it must be apprehensive. It must react. And the Russian reacted in the way that he made a proposal. Look, this move is a threat to my country. Let's discuss. He put it in writing, but everything was ignored. And then look at the result now.
Absolutely, yeah. The result of what we are seeing today, and like you said, there is no need for the escalation of the situation, like probably what we are seeing in the Middle East at the moment. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's still this public diplomacy that is at play in Russia. And we continue with you, Purnima Ananda. Now we know that India has been very instrumental in the crisis. You mentioned earlier on the visits by Narendra Modi to both Ukraine and Russia, discussing with both leaders, all with one objective, putting an end to the crisis. So what role do you think that India, in terms of maybe crisis communication, we also know that India remains one of the nations that have been very, that have abstained from the United Nations, decisions patterning Russia. So what role does India's, public diplomacy play in mitigating the negative perspective of Russian foreign policy among BRICS nations and even nations across the global world, in terms of having a clearer, public reputation that will enhance, international relations, international trade in the new world of multipolarity?
Thank you, Clarisse. This question is really interesting because during last 3 years and Russia-Ukraine crisis, India played very important role, and India's role is very significant to showcase that how BRICS countries are overcoming from different current turbulence time. I will describe it in 3 scenes. First scene was that Indian students were in Ukraine, and it was very difficult to take them out. And that time our Prime Minister Narendra Modi talked to Prime Minister President Zelensky, that please stop the war, we need to take out our students. But he said that if we will stop, Russia will attack on us and we cannot stop. So in that case, our Prime Minister talked to President Vladimir Putin, and he promised that they will stop war for 3 days, and in 3 days you take out your all students. So India played an important role to hold the war between Ukraine and Russia, and all the Indian students and other international students were able to come out from these regions. And it was very big success and diplomatic success of India to save the millions of young people lives. And after that, in second strategy, when Ukraine and Russia crisis was at height, India become absent, and on this action, other countries from non-alignment countries were also showcased their stand with India, and they saved the Russian side. And China and India played important role in the trade because they saved the Russian trade routes and trade products during this wartime. And Iran and other countries, North Korea, they supplied human resource as well as defense equipment to Russia. So this is all showcased that Russia is a big country, and during this 3 years time, Russia and other friendly countries have cooperation on energy, climate change, terrorism attacks, and new cooperation on digital communication. So this data digital communication is also very important during this 3.5 years, because data digital communication is the main fuel nowadays, where we can understand our flow, our economic flow, and how and where we need to cooperate, and in which routes we can get more acceleration. So this new technologies, artificial intelligence, and new trade economic strategies give new inputs to bilateral relations as well as multilateral relations during this turbulence time. So it is really new search and new observance in the world by experts, politicians, diplomats, and bureaucrats, that how we need to work in a turbulence time together to stand for our fruitful, peaceful cooperation. So I feel that during last 3.5 years and more, I think more, I am not exactly remembering this years, but I feel that all countries come together and they search new opportunities and new relationship between their countries, and Russia opened their gates for Africa, and they are doing highest level of cooperation in Africa. And as our professor told in this conversation, that Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they are making new alliance, and they are completely eradicate the European intervention in that country, and they are having common security, common currency, and common trade. So this is the result of Russian and Chinese and BRICS countries cooperation in this area, and this is a awareness of African leadership and African people, that they are creating new alliances and new cooperation. So these new things are coming up, and we are seeing that world is changing, and new alliances are developing, and it is a new hope, new cooperation. And as Madam Natalia and Madam Yulia said, that Indian foreign diplomacy is growing, and with very high patience, they are developing their relation with friendly countries, and they are feeling that all friends are together, and they are developing new roadmap for new world economic order in multipolar world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, developing new roadmap for new economic, political, and a multipolar world. Indeed, is a time of new alliances, shifting alliances, and then how can we indulge in this new dimensions of international relations, in this new dimension of international trade with trust among nations of the world? And we are almost going to the end of the program, so we'll be appreciating concluding responses from you, starting with you, Arnold DEVELAY. We're looking at the realities of the world, which I think to an extent from all that you and the other guests have outlined already, we see that Russia's diplomacy at each level has helped to bring about awareness of how the world functions, and of course the events which happened before the Cold War and after the Cold War, or even the First and Second World Wars, have actually brought us again to the understanding of what is happening in the 21st century. Now, with our topic for discussion being public diplomacy, how do you think, or probably what do you think the Russian Federation still needs to do to be able to indulge in a more practical diplomacy that will mitigate a global crisis at this juncture?
Well, I would say that above and beyond the concrete manifestation of public diplomacy, it's important that Russia remains steady in its attachment to existing international mechanism and the international rule of law. For better or for worse, Russia is, along with its partner China and India, now the torchbearer of the international order. And in this day and age where we are now witnessing a transition, a global transition from a unipolar moment to a multipolar world, it is fundamental that we have, somewhat an adult in a room, and that the, like I say, in that sense, we don't want to throw the baby with the water of the bath. And Russia needs to remain committed to the institutions, as it has done so remarkably in the face of provocation. And at some point, there will be a realignment. There will be a calming down of the situation. But it is fundamental that again, the international rule of law prevail, notwithstanding every attempt made to throw the world into chaos.
Of course, thank you so much. And in the same perspective with you, Professor OKOLI, you want to probably somehow in Moscow at the moment, and of course making an appraisal of the existing policies patterning the leadership of Vladimir Putin, and especially in these times of controversy and turbulence, as the other stakeholders like the European Union, NATO, and particularly the US very concerned about the position of Russia in Ukraine. So now, how can the former Soviet Union and the countries of the global south, particularly countries of the BRICS, navigate this moment with strategy and diplomacy to be able to ensure, like PURNIMA highlighted already, that it is a moment of new dimensions of international relations? How can these actors who are already aware of how the world functions bring forth alternative strategies which do not see war as a primary means of maybe getting fame or power in line with international relations and globalization?
Thank you for the question. Well, they say that war is a kind of system where young men are the opposite side of each other, killing each other without knowing why they are killing each other. Let me say that my prayer, my heart goes out to everybody, both in Ukraine and Russia, who has been affected by this war. I pray that reason will prevail. Absolutely. So that this madness will come to the end. Nobody needs this madness. We are all creatures of time. I don't know, what for? It's a senseless war. It has affected so many families. And I once again say that my heart and my prayers goes out to them. Coming to your questions, you see, yeah, the problem is there. It's already there.
Absolutely.
There is a need for solution. In my own understanding, when there is a problem, there is a need for solution. Sometimes solution is very important, but the most important is how that solution was reached. That how solution was reached will depend whether there will be peace after the solution, whether there will be love, whether there will be unity.
Absolutely.
Whether there will be even implementation of what was agreed, in the peace meeting. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's high time the people of the world reason very well to bring this problem to the end. It has contributed to human suffering. This thing has gone even beyond the Ukraine and Russia. Other regions are affected, blocks are being formed, realignment, that kind of thing. Russia has really, the president of the country of Russia has done very well because it's through his endurance and the issue has not escalated beyond how it is now.
Sure.
Because when you look at how they all the stack, it's left such endurance to allow this thing to be at this level it is. Absolutely. So what I'm trying to say is that we continue pushing so that the whole thing will come to an end and people will breathe at least normal life. For example, in Africa today, what is happening in Ukraine and Russia is affecting African countries. There is market economic instability.
Sure.
There is, price of energy, price of food very high, and there are other things. I think the world don't need these things. These things have to stop so that there will be peace. And as I said, Russia through their soft power has done a lot to be able at least to bring to the people's knowledge what is actually happening. Because in the midst of propaganda and disinformation, absolutely, people don't have proper information on what is actually happening. The narrative is different, invasion, no provocation, all this kind of thing, But when we are doing all these things, people are dying, young men and women are dying, life is being destroyed, family is being torn apart. What for? We don't need these things, absolutely. Politics or no politics, let peace reign. This is my own position. Let peace reign.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Maurice Okoli. Indeed, the world needs peace to be able to enjoy its, endowment. And we are going to call it off with PURNIMA ANAND, still with the way forward. And like you made mention, Professor, there is need to end this war with sustainable solutions. We know about the main agreement that how countries advocated that it only gave Ukraine time to prepare to come back, as we can see the Ukraine's position in the crisis. So with you, PURNIMA ANAND, so what, especially in terms of diplomacy, I know you've always advocated for people-to-people diplomacy to be able to probably attack the root causes of the turbulence in the world from the base before reaching at the very crucial level. So in line with Russia's standing and the Ukrainian crisis, which has global ramifications, what other moves or probably steps do we need to take, to be able to come to a time when we'll be talking about the post Ukraine crisis?
Yes, it is really whenever we are talking about people-to-people diplomacy, I always focus on people-centric development. Now, in this time, if we observe, our governments are having different tasks and people needs are different. People needs are very small. What they need? People need education, people need health solution, people need some economic solutions. But another side, governments are having different strategies and different needs because all governments, and if you see G20 countries and G20 government, all governments are indulged in wars. This is one thing. Second thing, all governments need fifth generation jets or sixth generation jets. So like this, their requirement in defense sector is very high, and scientists and governments and strategic planners are working to collaborate more than towards defense side than people side. So if you will see, this stretch is increasing, and if this stretch is increased, we are killing who is killing in this wars? Young people, common people. And who is suffering? Mothers, wives, sisters, children. So we are not caring why wars are required, why we cannot control. After 3 years, Ukraine and Russia have to sit on table and decide and declare that they solve the issues and peace is there. Similarly, Iran and Israel is fighting. So why we cannot control before the action of weapons? Or we need to use this wars for the weapon industry. This we need to understand very clearly. If we will not understand, whole world will kill each other, and we feel that after few years, human beings will not be there, only robots will fight with each other.
Okay.
So these solutions we need to understand at diplomatic level, people to people level, and we should have new kind of cooperation. What cooperation is needed between our countries? Instead of weapon industry and strategies to fight, I feel all countries should come for cooperation at front line in energy sector, in scientific collaboration for poverty alleviation, for food security. Now we are having white economy, blue economy, green economy. So we should utilize all these words for human-centric development, for the benefit of people. Then we will be able to sustain humanity. We will see the peace. And now we are hearing through media that for peace, American bombs are going to Iran.
Yeah.
I don't understand this word. This is like
So
you are
controversial.
fucking before the virginity. This is like this. So
Absolutely.
you cannot take peace by bombing, by war.
Sure.
For peace, we need to sit together. We need to take action, and we need to understand how we can together, by scientific cooperation, by diplomatic cooperation, by political cooperation, make human-centric development for the peace and for the cooperation and for new opportunities. And world is ready. People are ready. People can work. People will work after war or before war.
Absolutely.
So, but our governments, our rulers need to think, rethink. They should take permission from all mothers before starting the war.
Absolutely.
So my suggestion is only, and my observance is that we should think about people before taking any action. And during last Ukraine-Russia crisis, Russia take very good action, and with patience and with the cooperation of friendly countries, they act very nicely, and they keep sustainability in war sites also, because they not madly started the war.
Okay.
They step by step control the Ukrainian madness and NATO action at their borders, and it was necessary. We visited ourselves, and many people, those who are present in our conversation today, they visited. We really see the real ground realities. What was the situation in Donbass? What was the situation in other regions? People were really suffering, and many homes were destructed by the bombs. So it was necessary for Russia to save them like mother. And Russia did it. So we appreciate Russian government, Russian foreign ministry, Russian defense ministry, that they saved the lives of these regions and many Ukrainian people. And this is a lesson of humanity that big countries should save small countries, small people, and they should cooperate in their economy and defense system.
Okay.
So this is the lesson from this Ukraine-Russia crisis. And I feel that always we get some lesson, and this is a good lesson for all observers and policymakers for new economic development, new world order.
Indeed. Indeed, very imperative for a new world order, very imperative for new relations, and with what you've just said, dear Purnima, we can arrive at the conclusion that public diplomacy, of course, is an international relations tool which governments are using to probably enhance foreign policy or foreign relations, and it is very imperative that it should be more, people oriented to ensure that we solve global crisis in a way that we do not have to, escalate, maybe add more tension to the already existing tensions in the world. I want to thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for the great analysis pertaining our topic for a discussion this day. Just to recall that we were joined by ARNAUD, political consultant, also a lawyer. He's from France, but joined from Russia. We also joined by Professor MAURICE, OKOLI, Institute for African Studies and Institute of World Economy and International Relations, a Nigerian, that joined from Moscow in Russia. Purnima ANAND, president of BRICS International Forum, who joined us from India. Thank you so much. And YULIA BERG joined from Russia, founder of GLOBUS Expert Club, also political scientist, and a special guest from Donbass, the heart of the crisis in Donetsk, who is representing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the presence of NATALIA MIKHAILOVA. Thank you so much for the great insight, and I think that it was a moment of great exchanges with different discourses pertaining public diplomacy and its importance or relevance in ensuring that we mitigate the negative narratives across the globe pertaining the Russian Federation and other countries in partnership with Russia. Without forgetting, we want to appreciate the technical crew for ensuring that the program was a success. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you immensely for trusting the Pan-African media, and of course for giving importance to this discursive and knowledge sharing program, Global Insight, brought to you by Globus. Bye-bye.